Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Games get 10 times better when Michelob Ultra is on the line, so race to the bottom of a slope. Winner gets an Ultra. Or enter at michelobultra.com/ultra instructor for a chance to win tickets to the hottest sporting events of 2026. Michelob Ultra, Ultra Instructor, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 plus. Begins on January 30th, 2026. Ends on February 22nd, 2026. See official rules at michelobultra.com/rules for free entry deadlines, prizes, and details.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
Every sip of Coca-Cola brings you closer to the excitement of the FIFA World Cup 26. Because nothing compares to the joy. So grab a Coke and drink in the FIFA World Cup 26. No purchase necessary. 13 plus in 50 U.S. states and D.C. with a web-enabled device. Ends March 1st with 8 entry periods. Rules at cokeurl.com/soccerrules.
Welcome to No Question About That. This is the Midweek Pod with me, Ed, and that is Adam over there. How's it going, Adam? It's been a little while.
It has been a little while. So much has changed. I didn't even know what we talked about in our last episode. It might have been an extra.
I think it was an extra, yeah.
Yeah, a lot has changed. It's just been an amazing month. It has been such a feel-good month. I feel like I've got my energy back. No, it's been really nice. How are you going?
I'm doing good. Both, just generally, life and all of that. Michael Carrick's Mighty Reds have been storming it up, and that's just making everyone feel a lot better. I mean, I kind of think the Fulham performance was the worst of the three in many aspects, but, good enough, and there's enough talent there, and if you, in modern parlance, platform the players correctly, they're more likely to get you a bit of luck. Or a brilliant finish, as Benjamin Sesko did. I don't think United win, well... Here's an argument you can't prove either way. Would United have won any of those games without the managerial change?
They don't win all three. I think the likelihood, the statistical likelihood based on the history, I think it took 36 games for him to win back-to-back, was it? And I think you just look at it, and also I think the thing about the Fulham performance for me is that they don't win games like that previously. They weren't winning ugly very often when they weren't performing too well. Fulham were really good at breaking down their press in seconds. Mm-hmm. And they weren't winning games like that previously. We've seen them win a variety of games now in that 3-game spell. They've won a tough game on the road where the momentum swung, and they were good in patches and they were really bad early on. And then they weren't really good at home, but they got the job done. They got the 3 points. And in a real feel-good Manchester United sort of way, and then they absolutely thumped City. Mm-hmm. So we've had a bit of everything, which is sort of the hallmark of this team, that lack of consistency. So I think you're seeing the players' platforms better. I don't know about you, and call me a body language doctor, whatever, but I feel like the vibe is better based on what we're seeing. I think a new manager always does that, and we're seeing plenty of reporting about the changes in training methods and approaches post-game and the day after, and how they used to have some players would have a day's rest. The players who didn't play would do a full session of training. And I think all that kind of refreshing change is always good. So maybe you're right that without the managerial change, this doesn't happen.
Yeah, counterfactual that we can't prove either way. I would be surprised if United won that game at Arsenal, because you had to be on the front foot to win that one, at least the intent, even if it was 40% possession. Little different against City and the Fulham one, who knows? I mean, it's definitely the kind of game we were losing under Amorim. In any case, look, it is much, much better feel good around Old Trafford. You're right about the reports around training. They've changed it up a little bit. Steve Holland appears to be having a major impact, and Carrick is, although he's hands-on, he's trusting his small team. And they all have experience working in England, working in the Premier League, working with big clubs, and none of Ruben Amorim's team did at all. And in a short spell like this, just half a season, I think that probably makes a lot of difference. No one has to learn anything, right? And Carrick, just with the intent, he's just set them out to attack when they can attack and be very compact when they need to be compact. What he won't get is a new player this winter. I don't think it was really a surprise. And I guess, it's better that the window closes quietly than we slam it on our dicks, which we would have done under, previous regimes by spunking 60 million on Conor Gallagher or something like that. Who knows? And so they're holding fire. They did try and go for Antoine Semenyo early in the window. He took up the opportunity to join Manchester City in the Championship next season, open a couple of offshore accounts, maybe some shares in some shell companies, that kind of thing. Or we defended him in the summer when we lowballed an offer. I'm not sure how true all of these stories are, but nothing big. What was your take on both Semenyo and the attempt there and what it meant, and not reinforcing in other areas?
Oh, I really wanted Semenyo, don't get me wrong. I think, when you look at that need on the left side and the briefing or whatever, the reporting or whatever you want to call it now, I don't know how to deal with the difference in client journalism and actual journalism now that we're getting in various aspects of the football media. But I wanted Semenyo. I think he filled a massive void that they have on the left wing for that type of player. Matthias Cunha is just not that type of left winger. When he plays there, he tends to still want to get a little bit too close to Bruno Fernandes, and that's why Patrick Dorgu has proved so useful, because he uses all that space given to him, not mention the work rate he provides. But ultimately, they tried to advance on a deal they would have tried to do in the summer. Didn't happen, and then since that infamous Ruben Amorim press conference, we sort of knew that nothing was happening. He blew up, and he clearly wanted players and didn't get them. And from then, I sort of resigned myself to no reinforcements. You and I both said, on Twitter at least, that we would have liked the club to make a move, like give them the reinforcements that they need. If you believe that the squad can make the Champions League, I do, you do, the club clearly does, and they've briefed that, then would it not be worth at least providing one player who is Premier League quality, who can do a better job than Manuel Ugarte? You can make the argument about the amount of games left, and I do understand that, and it does make it hard when you don't have a coach in place for the long term and you don't have a heap of games to guarantee that a player will play. But I don't know, you can't help but feel like it's a massive risk with a massive opportunity in front of them.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that with a continued stumble in results from everyone from Villa down, that it is right there for the taking. Villa arguably aren't the third best team. I think you can definitely make that argument if you look at the XG table. They're one spot above Tottenham. So I don't know, how are you feeling now, like with a couple of days to process?
Yeah, I'm on board with the general strategy that we should be using our money wisely. A lot of the problems United have got, both financially and on the pitch, are because there's been some very bad spending over time, including some panic buys. We could have gone for a loan, I guess, the aforementioned Gallagher, but I just don't know why. I don't think he's the actual player we want. And previous loans that we've done have been pretty underwhelming, haven't they, in recent years? And what's the point, other than to fill a warm body in the squad? Couldn't promise them a lot of football. It's just the inherent risk. Well, it's the opportunity and the risk, right? So I think if, a bit like Semenyo, one of their favoured players had been available, like if, for example, Elliot Anderson didn't play at Forest and he played at Wolves, and they've decided to go on a fire sale to get the best price they can for some of their players, with the assumption that they're going down and they'll get even less after that's confirmed, then I think United would and should have gone for a player of that ilk. But it appears there just isn't. They've got a list of players they want in the summer. Most of them will be midfield oriented. They have to think about that kind of left-sided forward spot, because almost any of the managers they go for in the summer will want a a different style, a player who's more out to in and not necessarily always in Bruno's zone there as an option. And if we have European football, there's going to be a lot of games. Doesn't mean that Cunha's a bad player and suddenly relegated to the bench. You just need options, right? So, yeah. And then the other one. So that's the opportunity, right? You bring in players you already want to bolster your attempt to get in the Champions League. The risk is we are one Kobbie Mainoo or Casemiro injury away from relying on Manuel Ugarte for the rest of the season. I mean, just there are no other options. I mean, you can talk about pushing, ball-playing centre-backs into midfield. I don't think that's going to have the option that the result that you particularly want necessarily. And so that's the massive risk. You just got to hope they all stay fit. There's not too many midweeks, right? That's good for Casemiro. He doesn't tend to get injured. He can get suspended, but, we'll touch wood. And all of that doesn't happen. Kobbie Mainoo, on the other hand, has had an injury in each of his 3 seasons in the first team, right? And that's a worry, given especially what we talked about, the aforementioned training has been quite intense, apparently. So, it's just such a risk, and there's nothing you can do. And the options are, we could have kept Toby Collier, but he's not played a lot of football this season. He's been injured too. He doesn't have a lot of experience. Manuel Ugarte comes in. We just know he's not up to it at this point. Or it's the Fletcher brothers. And they're slightly different styles of player, right? If Casemiro gets injured, I don't think either one of them really is going to replace that. So there's the risk. You just got to hope, fingers crossed, toes crossed, touch wood, do a rain dance, whatever. It really could be, without being hyperbolic, the difference between being in the Champions League, £100 million extra to spend in the summer or not, and really tight budgets and probably selling at least one of the players we like to balance it out.
Yeah, and like you said, I think everyone who understands sort of the financial realities are on board with the situation and the strategy. Jamie's articulated this really well on United Inc. And yeah, I guess Champions League isn't the solution to all the club's financial problems, but United need to make Champions League because of the difference in revenue. It won't help them completely rebuild the squad, but it'll help them rebuild it without having to probably sacrifice a limb to do it.
Yeah.
It prevents a Bruno Fernandes sale. It's like not making Champions League all but guarantees. That takes that decision out of your hands, and he would probably not sign up for another season out of the Champions League, considering his contract situation and just everything. But yeah, again, like you said, none of those midfielders, whether Carlos Baleba, who the only reality of that is if he comes back and pushes for a move again, and then Brighton are like, okay, but that doesn't follow their transfer policy of signing a player in advance before they let a player go. And they did sign Pascal Gross, but they're in a really precarious situation of their own in terms of the table. So probably not going to happen. We know that Forest weren't going to sell. Adam Wharton, it's not clear how high up the list he is compared to those other two, I think anyway. Mm-hmm. Like they're all highly admired, as we keep getting told in every Athletic transfer article. That's not a criticism, it's just what we get getting told. But the links to Baleba and Anderson are extremely strong. It seems like they are the two top targets. If they could sign 2 midfielders this summer, it seems like it's going to be those two. And, those 2 and 3 weren't attainable. So I get it, but, the back of my mind, it's like I can't get away from this thought that there's this extreme opportunity that's right in front of the club that they wouldn't have probably imagined was going to be this possible at this stage of the season, that they were going to be almost in the driver's seat for a Champions League place, I would say, with the lack of football, a rest advantage that only gets more pronounced, in my opinion, as the season goes on. Yeah. With the amount of games that United won't have compared to the games that Chelsea and Liverpool likely will have.
And Villa.
And Villa, who are starting to have some XG regression, considering they've been overperforming for a while, and expected points as well. It's right there. And you can't help but feel like is a risk being taken. Like the fact that they do need a midfield rebuild, the question is how many midfielders do they need? Because we don't know that. Are they going to hire a coach who plays a 4-3-3? They're going to hire a coach who plays a 4-2-3-1. And arguably they are going to need like some sort of auxiliary midfielder. Could they have found that player in this window? It wasn't going to be Ruben Neves. He's just signed a new contract at Al Hilal, sort of proving that his financial demands were egregious and just never realistic. But, I mean, isn't this where also you can probably make the argument that Christopher Val and the recruitment department do make their money? Is there not someone you could have signed who is more of a long-term player but also adds immediate depth? I don't know. I just feel like it can't just be the players that the average fan identifies.
No, I'm sure they'll have a very long list of, I mean, if it's two midfielders, we get in two central midfielders, we get in the summer, that would really only replace Casemiro, who's leaving, and Ugarte, who presumably will get sold. So maybe it's two big ones and an auxiliary one, something like that. They have an issue to think about at left back, especially if Cunha is the main man, you need an overlapping left back just to fill those spaces in. Otherwise, it gets very lopsided, asymmetric, the attack. Luke Shaw's kept fit this season. He's never done it 2 seasons in a row. He does have another year on his contract, so it could well be that we have him anyway. What do they think about Patrick Dorgu at left back? What do they think about Diego Leon? How does Harry Amas? I mean, it looks like he's injured at Norwich, deeply unlucky to change. Played 15 minutes and got injured in training. But what are their plans for all these players and so on? So that's another one. And then there is not a backup striker if Josh Zirkzee is sold, although I guess you could call Brian Mbeumo. Like, I don't know what they think about Brian Mbeumo long term, whether they think he's a central striker or not. Because, I mean, he's a brilliant player, don't get me wrong. World class coming off the right and cutting in. Is he a world class central striker? We'll find out. Because that's, you know. So anyway, a lot of, you know, plates spinning, a lot to think about. It would be very good for United to go on a very, you know, deep run, and for Liverpool, Chelsea and Aston Villa to have some hiccups while navigating European football, and for us to be quite confident about our Champions League spot for next season nice and early so they can start doing some planning, especially with the World Cup coming up. You'd probably like to do some deals before that rather than having to scramble in, you know, mid to late July, just as pre-season is about to start for those players who are on at the World Cup. Anyway, there you go. It's all a bit moot since the window is now closed, but there's going to be a lot of wailing online if Casemiro gets a bad injury. It's gonna, yeah. I don't think that's hyperbolic to say if he is injured, you know. And it's look, credit to him and all the fitness regime and all the fact that we're playing one game a week. That I certainly thought he was done physically. But he's been putting in excellent performances every single week, all season, albeit for 60 or 70 minutes. But this is Casemiro of old.
Kids. They grow up so fast. One day they're taking their first steps. And the next, they don't fit into the tiny sneakers they took them in. You blink your eyes and their princess dress is 2 sizes too small, and their dinosaur backpack isn't cool anymore. But don't cry because they're growing up. Smile, because you can profit off of it. For real, there are a bunch of parents on Depop looking for the stuff your kid just grew out of. Download Depop to start selling.
It is, and I posted something the other day about the amount of goals they've conceded with him on and off the pitch, and it is extraordinary.
Yeah.
I'm just digging it up now. So, you know, they've conceded 18 goals with him on the pitch in nearly 1,600 minutes. You know, that's 86 minutes per goals conceded. But without him, 18 goals in just over 600 minutes, like 34 minutes per goal. Like it just shows how vital he is. I think his plus minus is plus 15 with him on, minus 7 with him off.
Right.
I mean, I don't think it goes without saying that he's, after Bruno Fernandes, I think it's probably fair to say, their most important player. Not just because of the midfield issues or anything like that. Just the fact that United's midfield and just the team, the setup of the team, his experience, not to mention his revitalization. When you use him right, clearly, this is what you get. And for him to be, is it 33, turning 34, to still be producing at this level, be what, a top 5 defensive midfielder in the Premier League, probably at minimum this season.
Yeah.
Goes without saying.
He's a very good profile fit with Kobbie Mainoo, if you look at their data as well. Extremely good. Go check out any of the pizza graphs or anything like that. So if you were trying to create a balance of central midfield, that's what you would do. Ruben Amorim, of course, had completely other thoughts. There you go. That more fool him. He's now enjoying the beach somewhere with his many ill-gotten millions that came out of the club. Or more fool us for not doing the due diligence properly, which is probably actually... I'm sure that I'm sure they'll have learned, but I don't know.
It's to be seen.
I hope they have learned from that, and everyone is on board, and everyone is extremely clear about, with the next coach, how they're going to play, what the squad needs to look like. Wilcox and Vivell on board. Do our target players fit with the new coach or not, both stylistically, system-wise, and data? And if they're going to do it top down, they need to pick a coach that fits the squad that they want to construct. Right? Not hire the coach and then go, what do you want, mate?
Well, the squad fits it better now, right? So I think back then, I don't think the squad gave a great guide on how to proceed, apart from the fact they probably needed a 4 at the back coach. But with the way they've filled out the squad now and they've got to just do the midfield, I think it's a much better guide on what sort of coach can take them forward. To me, spoke about this, and I know you did your shortlist with Dom on the extra. Yeah, to someone like Nagelsmann or Tuchel, or if they go for someone lower caliber or less experienced or less well-known that fits in a coach structure better, I'm not sure. But I think it lends itself to a common sense appointment, if that makes sense. There is a wide array of candidates, but they all sort of lend themselves to the way the squad's been built. Now it actually seems like the squad has been built with a plan. The recruitment is the one thing you can probably attribute to the Ineos era that they've gotten right. They now just need to prove they've learnt from the mistakes from Eric Ten Hag and Ruben Amorim and actually run a proper process, which thankfully they have what would be, let's say, 4 months to do. You would want to have that appointment decided by the end of May, even if it's not announced, so that you're planning around that and you're you've got targets in hand, even if the deals aren't official.
Yeah, absolutely.
Commitments made.
For sure. And that's why driving it top down makes a lot of sense. And you can get on board with that idea that they're going to do that both the coach and the recruitment strategy go hand in hand and not driven by the coach. Because if they want a World Cup manager, if they wanted Thomas Tuchel, he's not going to be available until probably middle of July. And does that mean then you're not starting your recruitment process? Maybe that's all right, but we know how long these things can drag out, especially if there's competitive tendering or competitive bidding over Elliot Anderson. Could drag out all the way till, weeks. I mean, it did with Brian Mbeumo, didn't it? So, and it's a strategy with some clubs to drag stuff out. So it'd be nice if they could do it early. There was a piece in The Athletic this week, I guess Mark Critchley and a few others contributed to it, about the Glazer family apparently being unhappy with United's commercial performance. I mean, my reaction to this was, fuck off, it's you. Have a look in the fucking mirror. I don't know what your reaction to that piece was.
Same as yours. I mean, we've spoken about it for a while. I think probably since you and I started talking about this on the pod. Well, when I've started coming on the pod, is that the commercial growth and the cash problems stem back to COVID and everything, but it's been a long-held problem. This is not something that's new. It's kind of ground to a halt over the last half decade. I don't know who's responsible for that, if not the Glazers. A lot of that is because of, for one, not being in Europe doesn't help. You can have sponsors lined up in the event that you make the Champions League, things like that. Blanc was entertaining sponsors at the City game, for example. But yeah, how can this not be the Glazers' fault? They have failed to use the club's gargantuan reach. And the fact it is no longer a commercial behemoth. It has the capacity to be, it has the potential to be, but they have squandered that now for years. And instead of doing what Liverpool are doing now, which is allowing them to spend £500 million inside 6 months, this is what you get. Yeah.
It all goes back to them and their mismanagement. It was them that appointed Ed Woodward. It was Ed Woodward that appointed himself director of football. These were supposed to be commercial geniuses. It's now 15 years since they rolled out their strategy of having regional partners. loads of clubs have overtaken United and there's not been a rethinking strategy. Obviously, with Mark Armstrong having come from Paris Saint-Germain, there's a new chief business officer. There will presumably be a rethink about that commercial strategy, but they need the raw material, and the raw material is United in the Champions League, and not one season in 3, but properly in the Champions League and it feeling like we're back. All these things go hand in hand. I mean, it kind of comes to the recruitment in the summer as well, because it is an unusually low point scoring season. It might be 60, it could be as low as 61 gets you 5th place and a place in the Champions League. You know, and there's no guarantee that the season after that will definitely have an extra spot. You know, it depends on the performance of the English teams. They look very powerful this season, but, you know, season to season that changes. It's only a couple of seasons since England did not have that extra spot. And so then United would be looking at having to get a 9-point gain, something like that, 9 or 10 points, maybe more. Sometimes it's, you know, low 70s, isn't it? Just to get back into the Champions League, right? So you've got to keep moving forward, which means you have to keep performing on the pitch in order to attract the sponsors. There'll be a £10 million reduction on the Adidas kit deal if United are not in the Champions League. There's the sleeve sponsor is running out. They don't have a training kit sponsor. There is no training ground sponsor either. This is probably £30 million a year being left on the table right now. More, in fact, actually, because the training kit sponsor was pretty lucrative. You know, the options of, I don't know, Sir Jim stepping in and Ineos doing it are complicated. They'd have to go through the valuation process for a related party. Ineos have been pulling back from sport, even if it feels like a very low number. It would also bolster United's bottom line and increase the Glazers' negotiating position for a potential future change of ownership to a small extent. But I'm sure that plays a piece in the thinking as well. I mean, although, look, Sir Jim has always known that the more successful his operational control of United is, the more cards the Glazers will have in terms of like future ownership control. So that's always been true. But yeah, there's some complexity there. But you're right to say United are not the commercial behemoth of old. Still pull in a lot. It was record commercial revenue, but that was partly because they signed a really long-term deal with Qualcomm and Adidas, and you know, in 5 years' time, both those deals might not look like that, given how much our competitors at home and in Europe are advancing on their commercial strategies as well.
Yeah, and we've seen that happen a couple of times with the Adidas deal that they've signed and the previous deals that they've signed. When they signed the Chevrolet deal, it seemed amazing. But those deals eventually get bypassed. I mean, you lock in long-term money, and that's great. And it's the best thing about it is you lock in, say, £950 million over 10 years or whatever it is. But those deals eventually get bypassed. So you have to keep, there's no room for complacency. And you're seeing in the CIES report, you see the amount of money Madrid are making because they've finished their stadium. Like they're passed into the billions now for revenue, not billions.
Yeah.
They're into the billion mark, and these are the opportunities that the club is missing. And again, you and Jamie talked about this on United Inc., but we're going to see this sort of depressing state of where the finances sit versus just the other Premier League clubs next year, because it's going to be more reflective of what we've already missed out on this season. And what you were saying about the squad too, like there's going to be more games next year, and that's going to be great for us as fans because we've been starved midweek. The time between games is only getting more pronounced as this season goes on. I mean, we've got Tottenham this weekend, West Ham late next week, and then a 13-day break before the next game. And next season, it's not going to be like that, which is why they need to pad out the squad this summer and why Champions League, more than Europa League, is so vital, because if they don't have that squad depth and the ability to rotate, there is no way they are getting that 9-point gain or whatever it is to get back into the Champions League next season. I don't think like anyone can put into words how important the rest of this season is. And that is why, again, in the back of my mind, I'm like, maybe we should have found a way to sign a midfielder.
Yeah. All right. This is a sharp left turn on the discussion, but it is the anniversary, or when people are listening to this, the anniversary of the Munich Air Disaster, 1958. Again, United always mark this in a really respectful manner, I'd say. You know, there's the ceremony at the plaque. in Manchester, and then there'll be a delegation going to Manchester Platz in Munich. I always ignore the nonsense online from City fans who always seem to... It's not like they're disrespectful, but they have this kind of weird narrative. A few other fans have this weird narrative that somehow this is our commercial plan. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that too much, because it's just... But it comes out every year. But I think they get the tone right almost always. And, it's kind of... None of us were alive, right? Not even nearly. I mean, there's a few odd folks around who are United fans who are alive, obviously, and a dwindling number of players who are around as well, as you'd imagine, 50-odd years later. But I think United do this well.
Yeah, I think the way that they acknowledge that it's what it represents in the club's history, that it's nearly 70 years now. I think it'll be 70 years in 2 years. I think it was 68 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Year.
Yeah.
And, coincides with the 2028 plan, the 2028 project, whatever you want to call that. And I think the idea that it's somehow tied into a commercial plan is weird, because it's quite understated the way that they celebrate it. It's not milked in any sort of way, let alone the fact that there was a City player on that flight. I think that City fans don't know that is always astounding to me. But I guess their history only dates back, 18 years. So it's not for everyone. But I think the way they do it is really understated and beautiful. It is always very respectful.
Yeah.
It isn't, they don't put a lot more into it than it's concise in a way, I guess is what I would say, online. And everyone, all the fans that I see on United always pay tribute to it in a really nice way. I think it's one of those rare things where the civil wars or whatever happens online, apart from those fans that you mentioned, everyone sort of puts their guns down for the day.
Hopefully the players have all got the message to not plaster out their messages with player logos and all sorts of nonsense. Who was it? Was it Tom Cleverley or Phil Jones? I can't remember which one now. Maybe both of them stuck a logo on their Munich post, which felt a bit didn't quite hit the mood music, did it?
No.
So, yeah. I've never been to Manchester Platz. I've been to Munich many times and never had the opportunity to get there in any of my trips. So one day.
We heard you. 9 years of Bring Back the Snack Wrap, and you've won. But maybe you should have asked for more. Say hello to the Hot Honey Snack Wrap. Now you've really won. Go to McDonald's and get it while you can.
Kraft Mac and Cheese is better than 90s hip-hop. We'll remind you of your childhood without making you feel incredibly old. Kraft Mac and Cheese. Best thing ever.
United have a game against Spurs this weekend, lunchtime kickoff at Old Trafford. Spurs are properly rubbish. They at least haven't fired Thomas Frank yet. I suppose there's still time in the week. They're unlikely to do it on Friday. Give them a new manager bounce, bring in Ryan Mason for the 18th time or something like that. They were quite spirited against City last week. I mean, wound City players up no end that they felt like they'd somehow been robbed by the referee.
Rodri just cinema for the rest of us.
Yeah. So, how are we feeling about this one? I mean, they've been probably rubbish, Spurs have, and yet that was one of their better performances this season at the weekend.
I can't quite figure out Spurs. I don't necessarily think it's Thomas Frank. I think they have a club problem. They have a club mentality problem. I was listening to Andy on Talk of the Devils sort of saying how Tottenham fans have been turning on each other in the stadium and things like that. I just think there's this, and call me arrogant because it's from a club like United, but I just think they have this loser's mentality that they can't shed. And I think the fact that I don't even think the Europa League will shed that. Nothing that hasn't changed anything. Thankfully, Brennan Johnson won't be taking part this weekend.
Yeah.
Has actually been a really good player for them this weekend. Him and Sarr have the best plus-minus on their team, so +8 when they're on the pitch. So thankful he's gone in that aspect. But Tottenham's attack has actually been really strong this season. But the funny thing about that is they have overperformed their XG by 10. No team has a bigger goal overperformance. So they are very efficient, but they're also 17th in expected attack performance. So they are really bad defensively. So it's what's held them up. They've been really bad. really bad. Even though they have Van de Ven and Romero, who hasn't had a good season. Don't know if I'd actually want him to play on the weekend or not. If he doesn't, I think Benjamin Sesko is going to start and he is going to destroy them physically. It would be really interesting to see whether Michael Carrick does start him this weekend. I think if Romero does miss, because Van de Ven is going to play, then it is an opportunity to get him out there and let him use his physicality to dominate opponents. Sort of the way he, against Newcastle, although he didn't score, he was actually able to get some real physical dominance on Malik Thiaw, or Thiaw, however you pronounce it. Apologies, Australian accent, but they have discipline problems too. No team has been carded more in the Premier League this season, but their injuries are still crazy, even though they're getting players back. So it's Maddison, Bentancur, Kudus, Davies, Bergvall, Richarlison, Porro, Kulusevski, and Danzo. Even with Solanke may be going to play, and he's still injured, but he's playing.
But he's playing anyway, Yeah. They played three at the back a couple of times in a row, didn't they? Are they going to do that again? I mean, it doesn't seem very frank. He's always been a back four guy. And in fact, he's been a 4-4-2 guy an awful lot. So going to three at the back, just have an extra defender there. I actually don't mind if they do that because they end up playing a midfielder there. And so that's one thing. And also, you would imagine we would be able to get the impetus from that because they'll be playing fullbacks although they do have attacking fullbacks, although maybe not on the right because Porro's out. It would provide United the momentum. Be interesting, this one, because City, we didn't have much of the ball. Arsenal, we didn't have much of the ball. I think a few places people thought Fulham would play a lower block, but every time I'd seen Fulham, they play a mid-block and break, which is basically what they did, and they were very good with it. You actually should, in theory, have quite a lot of the ball in this game, especially given how Thomas Frank sets them up, right? This is not Ange ball. It's like the polar opposite. I don't know what the opposite of Ange ball is, but this is it. And they will play some more direct football. Are they good at set pieces? I mean, they should be Thomas Frank's side, but I don't think they actually have scored that many from set pieces. They're not United, are they? They're no United. I think we've got the most.
The Bruno Casemiro connection is kept us fed this season, to say the least. I'm sort of wondering if it'll be a little bit like the Europa League, where they'll sit off and allow United to have the ball, and that's like another test in itself. Can United overcome something they failed in the biggest moment of their past couple of years? So it is another test in that way. I'm curious to see how you'd like them to set up an attack. Who would be your front four going into this weekend?
Yeah, I'd like to see some more of Sesko. I mean, if it is versus Romero, he likes a fight. But I think Sesko's mobile enough in the way that Højlund would just stick with the fight and forget that you had to run into the channels. Sesko does not do that, and he's quite happy to drop a little bit deeper as well. I mean, there is the question mark if Cunha is starting, which I presume he will. If it's Cunha, Bruno, and Sesko wanting to drop deeper, they probably want a reference striker, so he might play right up against the defenders there. I'd like to see more of him. Carrick has been quite loyal with his front three so far. I mean, obviously, Dorgu got injured, so Cunha came back in, but he's played Bryan Mbeumo through the middle. Van de Ven's very quick. I don't know whether Mbeumo's pace is an advantage there or not, really, in that case. Romero's quick enough. So it might be set up for that. But who would drop out in that case? I mean, is it Cunha dropping out and Ahmad shifts over, or Mbeumo shifts over, or is it Ahmad dropping out and then Mbeumo goes to the right and Cunha to the left to give you more balance? It's kind of an interesting one.
Yeah, I actually would like to see Bryan Mbeumo on the left, sort of replicating the hard work, because he has such a good work rate. He
did a few minutes in the Fulham game, didn't he?
Yeah, I could actually see him performing a much more high caliber version of the Dorgu role, where he's more involved because of his attacking prowess in that sense. But his work rate, him and Ahmad can really perform that up-down role. I am wondering if potentially with the amount of work that Ahmad does do, because he does such good defensive work, is there a chance that he won't start and Bryan Mbeumo will actually start off the right this time? I think these are great problems. I think sometimes people, like you see the online discourse, it's like, well, why haven't you picked this player? It's like, well, sometimes it's okay to have a wealth of options. That's the whole point of having a squad. You need like a strong 18, which then you need it filled out with depth. Or 18 or 20. So I actually think these are the good problems. And you have Xerxes, who actually makes much more sense in this setup. We might get a guide. If Sesko starts, it does give a chance for Xerxes to come off the bench, because I think if Sesko's on the bench, then he's not likely to, unless you're chasing goals. So it's really interesting. I mean, the only thing we know for certain is that the trio of Fernandes, Casemiro, and Maino will start. And I don't think there's going to be a change in central defence. I think it's going to be...
I think it's great. Unless they're worried about anyone's physical performance with the game coming up 3 days later against West Ham. If they're worried that anyone's in the sort of red zone, Harry Maguire's come straight back into the team, played every game, every minute. Are they worried about him? That would be the only question. I'd be surprised if they make that change. I don't know how... We're not getting any information on Matthias de Ligt and how close he is to a return. It's been so long. Lower back problem. I don't think we've even had a sense of like what it is. Is it a muscle thing? Is it a disc thing? Is it nerve? Like
there's been a bit of talk that it's a stress fracture.
Stress fracture, okay.
There's nothing confirmed, and that's the whole problem. We've never had a timetable. At the very start, it was like it could be. I think we were told by Ruben Amorim that he could be back in the next game, and that was at the end of November. His last game was against Palace when we went there, and it's just a shame because he was having a really good season, and as long as you have him or Maguire, it's okay. But I think at least with Maguire in terms of red zone and stuff like that, at least they're playing every 7 days. But maybe Maguire doesn't play both Tottenham and West Ham.
We'll see. I mean, he's just become a little more injury susceptible, hasn't he, given his age? Totally unclear on whether he's going to get a new contract or not. I would imagine, given that there was all that talk of them making a late go at Jeremy Jacquet, who had been on the list for United for a long time. I don't think that was any kind of secret that they were looking at him. Every top club in Europe was. Whether that is signalling that they're thinking about moving on from Maguire and letting him go because he's on a really big contract. It'll be even bigger if they're in the Champions League. You know, of course, you have to buy a new player, but what are you going to get anyway? One more season of him, maybe. And so it might be signalling they're thinking about that. I would be very tempted, as obvious as some of his weaknesses are against quicker players, and as much as probably our next coach will want a higher line to compress the game, and he's not as comfortable in that position. His kind of leadership, his maturity in going through some of these really difficult times, batting off the abuse, it not only deserves another year, but I think it'd be beneficial, the leadership, especially if you're losing Casemiro. That's a big personality leaving. Be tempted to sign another contract, and I wonder whether they'll find a compromise on the money.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So if you do like a games trigger for a second season, which is a compromise on a reduced salary, then you sort of help him make up the fact that they have Champions League money, that sort of thing. But
he gets a bonus if he plays. I think Paris Saint-Germain did this. They put all their players on, like, you get an extra bonus if you play 65%. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the structure they're trying to move towards, right, where they're incentivizing everything. I think that's what we're seeing across club football in general, is where we're incentivizing a reward for performance or reward for durability and reliability. The other question, and I agree with you about Maguire, I think you have to keep him mainly because, between de Ligt, Martinez and Maguire, that's three players who would have question marks at minimum about their fitness. Heaven and Euro. And if you have European football, I still think you need another centre-back. So you can still sign a young centre-back this summer in the Jeremy Jacquet mould. And then you can bring someone else in who is Maguire's replacement ahead of time. So it still gives you options. And then they've got Jaden, I don't know how to pronounce his surname, Jaden Nagwashi, and other players coming through the academy who eventually you can promote, but that won't be as soon as next season. So it helps you stem that problem in the short term. So it just makes sense. The other question I had is there any chance Nasser Mazraoui is going to start a game in the next two? He's come off the bench a couple of times very briefly. Diogo Dalot has acquitted himself quite well since that moment of madness against City that could have seen him red carded. He's actually been quite reliable through the last three games in a back four. So,
well, it's less there's less on him to do stuff if he's in a back four than in a wing back system where he's the sole wide player, right? So I mean, got a soft spot for Mazraoui. I think he's a beautiful footballer. I guess the physicality of Dalot is the thing that's keeping. Or he was just in the team, right? And he's not done anything to be kicked out. He just manages to do something remarkably dumb every game where I'm like face palming, because he's just not ever a 9 out of 10 player, and he's very frequently a 5 out of 10 player, and it's normally between 5 and 7. You know, you do know what you're getting, but it's mostly mediocre.
Are you keeping the back four this weekend, or would you change it?
I guess so. I'm always tempted to play Masraoui, just because if you're going to have a lot of the ball, he's a beautiful footballer.
That's what I think.
I mean, I do think one of the things it's the balance of the team as well. It's not just individual players. So if Cunha plays and he's quite narrow, you want Luke Shaw to bomb on. I have my doubts about whether he can really, really do this. He did bits of it against Fulham, didn't he? He didn't really at all in the City or Arsenal games, because the games just weren't like that. Here, you'd imagine, especially if Tottenham do play a 3 at the back to try and overcome injuries and they're worried about their defensive situation and stuff like that, it'll be 1-on-1, right? And you'd want to get your player forward, because we have midfield cover. So can Shaw do that? Masraoui is not that player. Dalot is that player. He's happy to go up and down all the time. So it's the balance as well as the individual players that Carrick will be looking at.
Yeah, I just don't like. I guess for me, the way I'd probably say it is the last 2 games they haven't been like as good defensively as they were against City. They were better against Arsenal than they were against Fulham. They just weren't as compact and were cut apart, like I said earlier, through their press. But yeah, I think it's worth trying. I just don't think Delot's ever going to have that position nailed down. I still think they should sign a right back this summer and explore the market for the 2 right backs that they have. See what value is out there. If there's no value for Delot, do you look and see if there's value from Masraoui, being that he was signed cheap? It's just something you have to look at in the business aspect of football, I think.
Yeah, and we know that Dalot is not really a Champions League level footballer. Masraoui has been, but his problems were injuries related, and he said a few things that probably didn't go down very well in Germany. Different discussion, that one. So, yeah, I'd be looking at both footballers, both fullbacks in the summer for sure as potential upgrades, but it's obviously down the priority list. Midfield has to come first. But apart from that, there's not going to be many changes. I mean, for the weekend, Sana Lamans will play. It's probably going to be the same back four. We know it's the same midfield pairing. And so really your question marks are around, does Sesko come back into the team or not? And if he does, who drops out? And what's the balance of the front 4 then? Like, you know, is it Mbeumo moving over to the left and Ahmad stays in that position? Is it Cunha on the left and Ahmad drops out for Sesko? What are the options?
Yeah, these are good problems, aren't they? So
yeah, absolutely.
I like the unpredictability of it. They've just that the left side's just going to be a problem. So at least Luke Shaw can keep playing that left back role. Unfortunately, he's going to have to back it up against West Ham in less than 7 days. So hopefully he can continue this streak of starts that everyone keeps pointing out. And I'm knocking on wood every time they do.
I know, it's incredible. You know what's going to happen. He'll play every single game and every single minute up to the end of the season. Thomas Tuchel will go, he's still the best left back in the country. Pick him for the World Cup and he'll twang his ACL or whatever, and just inevitable, isn't it? Especially now I've said it.
Don't. Everyone will say that as well, and that's exactly what will happen.
I know.
But let's hope they just take him for his experience, and Lewis Hall is the left back they go with.
Lewis Hall is a fine player.
Who is the future Manchester United left back if they don't have their own internal solution. We'll eventually take him off Newcastle. And then Luke Shaw will just be a mentor presence, which is actually what I think is what they should do with Maguire this summer. I think they should take him.
Actually, it's not an area of the squad that is stocked with players. And I would be very tempted now he's back. Assuming he stays fit till the end of the season, if I was Thomas Tuchel, I'd be very tempted to take him.
Yeah, I think that know-how matters. It's like, I think a lot of people, like, I think you don't think about like the camp aspect and the bonding aspect of the players. And you need players who are just simply probably aren't going to play, who have experience and know-how. And if anyone has it for England against adversity and all the pressure they're going to be under, he's someone I'd be getting on that flight.
For sure. All right. Well, there you go. Transfer window has slammed shut. It didn't really say. There's only 33 transfers.
It didn't slam shut. I think like they just quietly slinked out the back door and it was done.
Quietly closed it, yeah.
Ethan, but did you see the United notification on the app where it was like our first deal of the day has been done? Ethan Wheatley is going on loan. I was like, nothing else is going to happen. Like
trolling us. Major news.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully good loan for Ethan Wheatley. I think they all look about right. I mean, it's just terribly bad luck for Harry Amas. I think Toby Collier, hopefully, touch wood, he stays fit. I doubt he's ever going to really become a United player, but he's a good player, right? He's been terribly unlucky with injuries and who he had ahead of him in the squad and stuff like that, mainly injuries, because I think everyone was the assumption that he would make a Premier League player. He still could, but he might have to drop down a level to do it. He
didn't play in Hull's first game because I just don't think they said he wasn't ready. I'm forgetting who Hull's manager is, but he was saying in his press conference before the second game or after the first game, one of the two, and he was saying he'll be in the squad for the next game. So it seems like he's going to play, certainly much more than he played at West Brom. So yeah, hopefully he can have a good roll on, and then maybe he is midfield depth next season if he has a productive loan spell, because they're going to need it.
We'll see. All right. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, sir.
You can catch us at patreon.com/NQATpod for the extra show. I can't remember if we're doing one this week. We'll do one this week. I just have to work out what it is. NQATpod.substack.com for general writing and stuff like that. You can catch Adam at Adam Joseph on the socials. I'm at NQATpod, and we'll catch you after the Spurs game. Come on, you Reds.